Welcome back to the general session. My name is Scott Foose, and I want to reflect on something that Captain Dave Bushy mentioned this morning, taking control of our destiny. It's my pleasure to introduce somebody who's doing just that. Our guest speaker is a pilot who has completed a solo around the world flight. He's founder of a nonprofit organization that inspires youth and minorities to pursue careers in aviation and aerospace. He's opened a hands-on learning center. He's a test pilot, recipient of high honors and many professional governmental awards, featured on History Channel. Sounds like I'm introducing somebody that should be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award for his contributions to aviation. But as you saw in the video, these are all highlights of a career of a young man who, although he's already achieved his place in history, is just in the early stages of shaping his legacy. Throughout the convention, you've heard discussions concerning the anticipated demand for pilots in addition to the critical issues and challenges facing the industry to attract and maintain the next generation of aviation professionals. Our guest today, through his organization Experience Aviation, is addressing the significant shortage of young people pursuing careers in aviation and aerospace. He's dedicated his passion and commitment to influencing the next generation of pilots. He's here to tell you about his successes of his dynamic aviation education programs. Please welcome Barrington Irving.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you guys very much for having me here today. I'm Barrington Irving. As you saw in the History Channel piece, I still hold the Guinness World Record for being the youngest person to fly solo around the world. This was a record I accomplished at the age of 23. Youngest person before me is 37 years of age. I know the theme, or one of the themes during this conference, is to really discuss the challenge we have in garnering young people and attracting young people to such a dynamic industry. I was introduced to aviation through a United Airlines pilot who flew a Boeing 777. And I was in a store, it was during the off season. He walked up to me dressed in uniform, just randomly out of the blue and said, "Hey son, have you ever thought about becoming a pilot?" I looked at him crazy. I told him I didn't think I was smart enough to fly an airplane. And in addition to that, I asked him how much money he made. After he answered that question, I took an interest in aviation, and that's when it all started for me. At the time, I had a full scholarship to play football for the University of Florida. I played fullback and linebacker. I was 197 pounds, 3% body fat, ran a 4.3 and a 40, and had a number of scholarship offers, but the University of Florida was where I was planning to attend school. And something happened when I met my mentor, Captain Gary Robinson. He not only told me about what he did, but he taught me about the industry. And I think the most pivotal hurdle I had to get over was believing that I can do this. And that moment came when I was provided the opportunity to sit in the cockpit of the Boeing 777 airplane that he flew. This was before 9/11. I had a chance to play with all the buttons in the cockpit, and I said to myself, you know what, I think I can do this. I think I can fly an airplane. And from that moment on, I made the decision when signing day came in Miami to turn down the football scholarship to the University of Florida. And it honestly, at the time, although it was something I was passionate about, I questioned my decision. Coaches thought there was something wrong with me. All the girls in high school who wore my jersey number on their shirts no longer wanted to talk to me. And that was probably the hardest process out of it all. So I made this decision, to turn down the scholarship. Here I am, trying to figure out a way of, well, how am I going to be able to access flight training? So of course, like any other pilot, I worked very hard, working at a grocery store, cutting lawns, cleaning pools, and I was able to obtain my private pilot's license at the age of 19. After obtaining my private pilot's license, I felt so accomplished. And I then started going out in the community in Miami. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood. I don't know how many of you watched the show, The First 48, where after someone gets killed, they have to figure out the case in 48 hours. Well, they filmed part of that series in my neighborhood. That's where I came from. And I was so grateful for my mentor in teaching me about the industry that I just began to go out in the community and just share my accomplishment of, yes, becoming a pilot, but also reaching out to young people and really trying to explain to them the opportunities that are available to them within aviation. And during this time, the lack of my knowledge, the director of aviation from Florida Memorial University was watching me and observing exactly what I was doing. And he offered me a full scholarship that not only paid for my remaining flight licenses, but also paid for my bachelor's degree in aeronautical science. When I received this scholarship, I truly felt blessed, and I said to myself, I need to do more in really attracting young people to this industry. And I'll never forget the moment when I said to myself, well, what if I flew around Florida? Boring. What if I flew around the United States? It's still not there. What if I flew around the world? Knew nothing about setting any world records. I just simply wanted to do something that created a dynamic experience for young people. Because that's how I got involved in aviation. I got involved in aviation because someone created a dynamic experience for me. Young people buy into experiences. They don't buy into necessarily a presentation or a textbook. They buy into something they can see, feel, and touch. And after learning that, I said to myself, I want to fly around the world. Saying it was one thing, getting the sponsors and support was another. It took me 2.5 years in order for me to get my first sponsor. Now, the aircraft we utilized to fly around the world was a Columbia 400 at that time, and it cost $650,000. How was I able to afford this plane? No one wanted to rent me a plane, lease me a plane, let me borrow an aircraft, so I said, well, what if I go after the original equipment manufacturers? So the first entity I went after was Continental Motors. I decided to drive from Miami to Mobile, Alabama, and I only had enough money to rent a car, put gas in it, buy a 12-inch sub, 6 inches for the first half of the day, 6 inches for the second half of the day. Brought plenty of deodorant with me because I couldn't afford to stay in a hotel or a motel. And I showed up on a Monday morning at Teledyne Continental Motors, and I said, hi, my name is Barrington Irving. Had a nice suit on, and I said, I'd like to see if your engine is good enough for my airplane. I didn't even own an airplane. They totally fell for it, brought me in, gave me a tour of the facilities and everything, showed me why I should utilize their engine and so forth. And then I said to them, I said, is Brian here? I called the CEO by his first name, acting as if I knew the guy. And I said, is Brian here? And they said, which Brian? I said, Brian who runs the company. They said, you know Brian? I said, yeah, I met Brian a couple times at different air shows and conventions and so forth. Never met the guy before in my life. Brian, they said, all right, we'll set it up. Brian walks in, immediately realizes I tricked his whole staff. And when I had the opportunity to speak to the decision maker, I was honest with them. I told them who I was, where I was from, what I was trying to do, and why I was trying to do it. And Brian just simply said, thank you for coming. Drove all the way back home to Miami with plenty of deodorant. Got a phone call a couple weeks later. It was Brian, and Brian said, you know what? If you had the guts to find me, I believe you can find yourself around the world. And he sponsored an engine worth $83,000. That's when my big break came. When I received the engine, the sponsorship, then the cockpit system was sponsored by Aviation, and then the seats and oxygen system with Precise Flight, and everyone else started to jump on board. We were able to cut the cost of the airplane in half, finance the rest of it, and I was able to fly out of Bend, Oregon at the age of 21 with that Columbia 400 aircraft. Fast forward March 23rd, 2007, I'm preparing to fly around the world. CNN shows up, Today shows up. About 4,000 or 5,000 people showed up to the airport. Everyone's rooting, go Barrington, go Barrington, go. Had a number of issues. Number one, the aircraft did not have a certified de-icing system. In addition to that, the weather radar XM satellite only worked in the United States and was no good for me outside of the United States. And the third thing that baffled me the most is as I'm reading these signs that says, go Barrington, go Barrington, go, I only had $30 in my pocket. And I'm saying to myself, where the hell am I going? I only have $30 in my pocket. But that was a monumental moment for me because that allowed me, when I departed from Miami to my first stop in Cleveland, Ohio, that provided me the opportunity where Miami fundraised close to $100,000. And the more I kept on going, the more funds were raised. Now, the flight took 97 days. I had a number of different challenges. I certainly learned a lot about international flying. Crossing, we modified the aircraft with a 75-gallon fuel tank, and which gave me a range of 1,800 miles. I was flying 10 to 12 hours at a time. Longest flight leg was about 12 hours and 30 some odd minutes, which was from St. John's, Canada to the Azores. This was a solo flight. And when that occurred, I had a few interesting moments. For example, when I landed in Egypt, I landed in Cairo, Egypt, I was greeted by guys in flip-flop shorts and AK-47s, pointing straight at my airplane, and I'm raising my hands in the air saying, guys, you have my permit number, there's no issue, and I'm yelling from the plane. I'm even pointing to my skin saying, I'm your brother, we don't have a problem here. I mean, there's so many different things, right? After about 30 minutes of hassle from him, I was able to get through that. And during this whole time, thousands of young people were tracking what I was doing. We had over 300,000 students we know of that were blogging and sharing on my journal. And all I was doing was posting pictures, talking about aviation, exploring different careers in different facets of the world as it relates to aviation. And we had over 300,000 kids tracking and following this. So it was at that moment that I realized I had something special. Of course, I had a number of different challenges. Flying back into the United States from northern Japan into Shemya, Alaska, which is only 1 mile long, 2 mile circumference. I had a very challenging flight. Originally, Russia cleared me through their airspace, then they pulled back the permit, and I had to fly around a couple of snowstorms ice storms, I should say, to get in there. I even had airline pilots radioing down to me, asking for my parents' name, their phone number, and they were saying, there's no way you're going to make it through the other side of this storm. Of course, they were at higher altitudes, and I thanked them for their encouragement, and just pretty much kept on going, and I was able to land the aircraft in Shemya, Alaska. I was stuck there for about a week, but then made it up through Anchorage and then down to the United States. Whole journey took me 97 days, close to 145 flight hours, and I traveled nearly 30,000 miles after making 27 stops. What occurred when I got back home to Miami, outside of the numerous awards from Congress and various officials and so forth, I realized I had something special that I shared with young people. I had their ears, I had their eyes, I had their attention. So I'm not naturally an educator, although you have your flight instructor license, but I'm not naturally an educator. And I decided to do a few things. And one of the things we did, which you saw in the video, is we tested our program where I brought 60 students together from the worst schools in Miami, and I said, I want to see if this could work. So I brought the worst students. I mean, I'm talking about kids with a 0.7 grade point average. For you to have a grade point average below 1.0, that's like you're purposely trying to fail. And we brought all these kids together. First, we put them through a 9-week after-school program, which was a huge success. Then we brought them together in the summer to build an aircraft from scratch, which they did. And not only build it from scratch, because they were a bit intimidated. Some of them couldn't read the manual. Some of them couldn't, point out a 1/16 of an inch on a ruler. And I said, you know what, guys? If you build the plane, I will fly it on its first flight. I should have rethought that a bit. Flight worked out really well. It was a tremendous success. It was aired on national TV a number of times. But that's what it took in order for these young people to believe. Almost 97% of them are pursuing some career aligned with aviation, aerospace, or science, technology, engineering, and math. As a matter of fact, the same young lady who could not point out a 1/16 of an inch on a ruler now is on a full scholarship as a math major at Duke University. We've had tremendous success with what we're doing in aviation simply because we've learned the simplicity of creating a fascinating experience for a child that motivates them and inspires them. And it's one of the beautiful things that we have about aviation. Aviation isn't one of those industries where you have to do much talking. It's really just sharing what is it we have, what is it we do, and how dynamic our industry is that just piques the interest of so many young people. So after having all of this success with young people, I realized, okay, it's great that I'm impacting Miami. We've also had success in Dallas, but we get so many emails, so many questions and so forth from all over the world. How can we leverage this in a way for our industry? Now, I know we have a number of challenges. Number one, the first challenge is the high school students that we're getting out of the public school system, most of them are not prepared to tackle these careers. They're simply not. We're ranked 24th and 27th in the world in math and science. We have some very serious challenges. And that's when I decided to orient my program and to really start to focus as early as 3rd grade, definitely locking them in middle school, and continuing that growth on into high school. But what occurs? There are a couple of factors that we all know. Together we can create a systemic approach, and I can get the student from interest to passion to wanting to pursue the career. But we have a number of challenges that as a group we need to address. One of the major challenges is the cost of training, especially flight training, something that we need to address together as a whole. In addition to that, we also have to address the guidance and the resources that are out there for young people in order to follow these careers. So now everyone's asking me, well, what's the next big thing I'm going to do? And we'll actually pull up a slide presentation here. There's 3 quick slides of what we're doing. Oops, I'll go back. All right, so what we're doing is we're planning to transform a light jet into the world's first flying classroom and create a virtual school like no other for young people. Already, I have 5 of the largest school districts that will be subscribing to this, from Miami to Chicago to New York to LA to Dallas and Houston. The whole goal of this is to create an exploration platform, providing young people, educators, parents, the opportunity to explore the world of math and science through aviation, something that's never been done before. So we're creating a virtual school where you can learn anytime, anywhere. Yes, I'll have the capability to communicate from 45,000 feet via the internet, as well as streaming some video, as well as communicating with the International Space Station. And in addition to that, we're preparing to launch this on October 1st of 2013. Now, what is this comprised of? This aircraft will travel to all 7 continents. We're going to be making 50 stops. Of the 50 stops, 36 of them will actually be expeditions. This project was chosen by National Geographic. Right now, if you go on National Geographic's website, you'll see that they selected me in this project for one of their top awards called an Emerging Explorer. Huge deal. Now we're going to be able to really bridge the gap between industry and classroom. In addition to that, we're designing this chorally for students grades 3 to 10, as well as college students. There will be elements of online voting while I'm on these various expeditions around the world. So for example, what does an expedition look like? One of the things we're working on with National Geographic, an expedition that we just solidified, is that when I land in Darwin, Australia, I will go out and hunt down a very poisonous frog called the king toad. The king toad is a poisonous animal that kills anything from an alligator to a puppy as long as it bites into it, and it lays 12 million eggs, and it's overtaken the ecosystem of Darwin, Australia. So when we land, we're going to work together with National Geographic explorers to go out, capture these creatures, be able to put them in a deep freeze, and then convert them into fertilizer. But through the expedition and the experience, we're wrapping around strong curriculum content that we know young people, of course, young people are going to log in to see if I get killed by one of these things, right? That's what they want to see. You know, but in doing so, in creating an experience, there's your opportunity to ingest knowledge, to actually teach, to actually align curriculum to national and international standards in math and science. As I mentioned, National Geographic is one of our major partners, as well as NASA. Now, I know some of you guys are wondering, well, how can we be a part of this? How can we join? And number one, you can host an expedition. We're looking for partners who want to feature a career, who want to feature a technology or product that we can highlight during this trip, or just simply becoming a sponsor, sponsoring a classroom, or providing mentors. We're creating a virtual career resource room where students will have the opportunity to not only talk to pilots and engineers and astronauts and explorers, but imagine the power that if you can give a child the same opportunity I had to speak to an airline pilot at the age of 15, at the age of 12, and garner a mentor virtually, this is what we're trying to create. So, you know, this is something that we're launching October 1st of next year, of 2013. It's already received a lot of major press, although we have yet to officially give the first press announcement. But we're highly encouraged with what we're doing in advocating for aviation, as well as in trying to really capture the next generation of pilots, of engineers. We have an outstanding record at our organization in taking students from interest to an actual career. And yes, we know there are a number of obstacles that we have to combat, but together, we can really make this a reality for young people. It's A, about the experience, B, about the quality of education you're ingesting in kids, and C, the systemic approach that we're creating to take it from the interest straight to our actual career path for young people. So with that, I thank you guys for having me, and I want to open up the floor for any questions you all may have about what we do at Experience Aviation. Any questions? What did we do in the 9-week after-school program? So we did some of the traditional things, such as, you know, building rockets and so forth, but we also mixed it up with a number of different things. So for example, we provided students the opportunities to get into stocks. We actually gave them money to buy stocks. And in addition to that, we had them talk to a number of guest speakers. We put them on flight simulators. We had them build wing spars. We had them do a number of different things after school, had no issues, and these were kids. Some of these kids were juveniles, and some of them were straight-A students, but we created real dynamic activities for them. I mean, this summer, we're preparing to have our students transform a hangar into a laser tag arena, right? And then we open it up to the community, and everyone plays laser tag from 7 at night till 3 in the morning. We're also taking them shark tagging. We're providing them the opportunity to build their own aircraft engines. So there are a number of different hands-on approaches that we take within our curriculum.
Barrington, I was asked to ask you the question, do you have a website that people can go to?
Yep, experienceaviation.org. It's experienceaviation.org. All right.
Barrington, how do you become a sponsor or sponsor a classroom or host an expedition?
Okay. As soon as I get off stage, I'll give you my business card. We're actually preparing to overhaul the website. National Geographic has already made the announcement on their website, and I'll be receiving the award in 2 weeks, which is when we're planning to reveal the new website about what we're doing. But I will give you my contact information after we speak. Thank you.
I have one. Oh, go ahead, Roger. I was going to say, being my entire career until I came to Washington was flying regional airlines, and we didn't go far out over water. It was pretty scary. So I wanted to ask you, you've gone a lot further than I ever contemplated. What was the scariest part of the round-the-world trip?
The scariest part of the round-the-world trip, outside of flying from northern Japan to Shemya, Alaska, was having to deal with monsoons, especially when you have military airspace to the south. I had an experience where a cell popped up out of nowhere. I could not do an emergency landing, military airspace to the south of me. And the mountains were underneath me at 9,100 feet. And I went from, 20 or 21,000 feet to 9,200 feet in the blink of an eye. And I grew some hair on my chest on that flight. That was a very challenging situation.
Actually, Scott actually You kind of stole the question I was going to do. That was unplanned. But I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, Barrington, we can't thank you enough for this kind of, for coming here and joining us here today. This is going to really kickstart a number of activities. Let me ask you, first of all, I guess with hooking up with National Geographic and NASA, I'm assuming that's going to be in Washington?
Yes. So the launch. Wow, you're
And
on
so
it.
before you even ask us for an invitation, you just let us know when you're going to be there, and we're going to bring you, and we'll take you around, and we'll get you hooked up with all the key players in Washington. You just tell us your travel schedule when you're going to be. And so RAA, consider RAA your home when you are there in Washington, D.C. Our office is Mi Casa, Su Casa.
Thank you. And that's actually tremendous, because the launch point for this will be from Washington, D.C. One of the great things about what we're doing, it has a lot of attention from members of Congress, which is very important for us. And I've had a number of congressional officials, from Marco Rubio to Congressman Bill Nelson to others, who want to see this launch out of Washington, D.C. and end in Washington, D.C. And part of the reason for that is Congress passed a congressional resolution in honor of the first flight. So now industry-wide, we're preparing to call them out on what we're doing for aviation, and also get help. Get help for our industry, and allow your groups and others to really leverage it, while we have their attention. When everyone wants to come up on stage and this and that, the time to really leverage this for our industry.
The other aside I was going to ask you, was there any significance to the first stop on the first flight being my hometown, being Cleveland, Ohio?
Well, Ohio was interesting. I think the weather knew that I was a Gators fan, so it was actually a rough flight to get into Ohio, but something special happened in Ohio. In Ohio is the headquarters for NASA SEMA program, the Science, Engineering, Mathematics, Arithmetic program based at the NASA Glenn Research Center. And NASA had over 87,000 of their students participating during the flight. And I will be working with the NASA Glenn Research Center. It's actually interesting. When we took this project to NASA, it went from a 1-hour meeting to a 3-hour meeting with the head of NASA Education and the head of NASA. And here's the challenge we have: really breaking the barrier between industry and the classroom. Aviation isn't as easily accessible as it used to be. And how can we show young people what exists? How could we turn them on to the exciting things that are offered in this industry if we don't package it and create a common platform? Not one organization doing this, another organization doing this, but in a common platform where we can all share and work with these young people to really leverage the impact that we can have. So, are there any other questions I missed? All right, well, I thank you guys for having me here. I'll be here at the floor, and thank you so much.